Short is the story, long is the life.
Wukong's archive presents China Urban Legends, The Door in the Well. In the autumn of 2004, I was transferred to work in Fuzhou, and my office was on Baiki Road in Gula District. When I was looking for a place to live, the agent showed me around all afternoon, and finally we stopped at the entrance of an alley by the Ontai River. The alley wasn't wide, on both sides were two-story wooden buildings, moss growing at the base of the walls. At the mouth of the alley stood an old banyan tree, its aerial roots hanging down, covering half the entrance. The agent said the rent on this house was cheap, but it was old. I asked how old. He said, "Go in and see for yourself." The house was wooden, 2 stories, with a sky well in the middle paved with bluestone slabs. In the sky well there was a well, its rim carved from a single piece of stone, polished to a shine. The upstairs rooms were empty, piled with old furniture, covered in dust. The downstairs rooms were clean enough, with windows facing the sky well, dark even in the daytime. Only later did I learn that in these old houses, the windows face inward, the sky well is the eye of the whole house. Old Lin said the sky well is where the house breathes in, the air comes from the well and leaves through the windows. At the time, I thought he was just telling old tales.
The landlord's surname was Lin, his full name Linshui, 76 that year. Thin, slightly hunched, spoke slowly, with a heavy Fuzhou accent. He lived alone in a small room next door. He said the house belonged to his family, passed down from his ancestors, and his father had been a tower keeper. I asked what tower. He said, the Zhenhai Tower on Pingshan.
I asked him, with such a fine house, how come it had sat empty for years with no one living in it? Old Lin glanced at me, didn't answer, and only after a pause said, empty is fine. The ones who move in, they don't stay long.
At the time I didn't take those words to heart. That same afternoon, I moved in. The first night, I didn't sleep well. It was footsteps. Footsteps from upstairs. The upstairs was empty. Old Lin said no one had gone up there in decades, only rats and dust. But that night, a little after 11, not long after I lay down, footsteps came from above my head, not heavy, very light, but crystal clear. It was the sound of shoe soles scraping against wooden floorboards. Step by step, from one end of the floor to the other, then back again. I thought it was rats, but rats don't make that kind of sound. I threw on a coat, grabbed a flashlight, and went upstairs. The stairs were wooden, creaking underfoot. The door upstairs was half closed. I pushed it open and swept the flashlight beam across, dust everywhere, a few old wooden crates, a bed frame. No one. No footprints either. I came back down. The footsteps were still there. They went on all night. When dawn came, I heard them reach the top of the stairs, and then, no sound of coming down. The footsteps stopped.
The next day I asked Old Lin whether someone had lived upstairs. Old Lin was watering his pot of jasmine in the courtyard and didn't look up. They lived there. I asked who. He said, the Zhang family that used to own this house. In the Republican era, they lived upstairs.
I thought for a moment, then asked, and now?
Old Lin set down the watering can and straightened up to look at me. Now? No one lives upstairs now. And no one ever will.
He paused, then added, if you hear someone walking upstairs at night, don't go up to look. When it's tired of walking, it'll stop on its own. I asked why.
Old Lin didn't answer. He picked up the watering can and went back inside. That afternoon, I couldn't resist. I went upstairs again.
Inside one of the old wooden crates, I found a few ledger books wrapped in oil paper. When I opened them, a smell of camphor wood came out. They were ledgers from the Republican era, with 4 characters printed on the covers. Zhang's silk shop. The accounts were recorded in detail. In such and such year and month, so many bolts of cloth came in, so many went out, all written clearly in neat handwriting. I flipped through. The last entry stopped at March of the 30th year of the Republic, spring 1941, 1 month before the fall of Fuzhou. Underneath the ledgers was a booklet, a sample book for silk fabrics. Page after page had swatches of cloth pasted on, gray, blue, indigo, all faded. On the last page, someone had written a line in brush ink, the strokes very faint, as if the hand had been trembling when writing. The accounts are settled, but the people cannot be settled.
I put everything back where it was and went downstairs. The next day I told old Lin about the ledgers. Old Lin said, "Those are the Zhang family's things. Don't touch them. If you do, Boss Zhang will come looking for you." That night, I listened carefully. The footsteps still started after 11, still walked from one end to the other. But I didn't go upstairs again. Strangely, knowing it was there made me less afraid. After a little over half a month, the footsteps came every night, and I gradually got used to them. What really kept me awake happened a month later. That night, what I heard was no longer footsteps. It was the well.
Only later did I learn that the alley I lived in was on the edge of 3 lanes and 7 alleys. People in Fuzhou say 3 lanes and 7 alleys has been around since the end of the Tang dynasty. Yijin Lane, Wanru Lane, Guanglu Lane, Huang Lane, Longguan Lane, Ta Lane. All of them home to scholars and officials. The alley I lived in was small and had no name. The old banyan tree at the mouth of the alley was its marker, so the neighbors all called it Banyan Tree Alley. Old Lin slowly told me about this house. He said the house was originally a warehouse for a silk and cloth shop owner in the early years of the Republic. The owner's surname was Zhang Hongyan. The Zhang family ran a silk and cloth shop on South Back Street, with business reaching all the way to Shanghai. The house was built in those days. Goods stored upstairs, people living downstairs. The well in the courtyard was specially dug back then, because the shop needed water for dyeing and starching cloth.
In 1937, the Japanese came. In August, planes bombed Fuzhou, and a bomb landed on South Street, less than 100 meters from the mouth of the alley. Zhang Hongyan stuffed his family into the cellar beside the courtyard and stood guard at the front gate himself. After the bombing, the house didn't collapse, only a few roof tiles were broken. Zhang Hongyan stood at the doorway, looking at the banyan tree at the mouth of the alley, and said something that old Lin later heard from the old folks in the alley. He said, "As long as the tree stands, the house stands." In April 1941, Fuzhou fell to the Japanese for the first time. On the night before the Japanese troops entered the city, everyone in the alley was packing up and fleeing. Zhang Hongyan didn't flee. He sent his wife and children off with the crowd and stayed in the house himself. The next morning, when the Japanese searched house to house and came to Banyan Tree Alley, the front gate of the Zhang house stood wide open, but the man was gone. Later, someone found a pair of cloth shoes at the edge of the well. They were Zhang Hongyan's.
The old folks in the alley said Zhang Hongyan had thrown himself into the well. But when they dragged the well, there was nothing in it. The water was murky, and after fishing around for a long while, they brought up a few scraps of rotten cloth and a piece of well rope. No body.
The remaining members of the Zhang family never came back to Banyan Tree Alley. After the war was won, Zhang Hongyan's wife returned once. She stood at the gate of the house for an entire afternoon, didn't go inside, and left. Someone asked her whether she wanted to take the house back. She said, "The man isn't here, what's the point of taking back the house?" Before she left, she cut a lock of the banyan tree's aerial roots at the gate, wrapped it in red paper, and took it with her.
The house changed hands many times after that. It housed the silk shop's apprentices, then a cadre from the department store after liberation, then an educated youth who came back from the countryside. None of them stayed long. The one who stayed the longest lasted 3 years. When he left, he told people that he could never sleep soundly at night. Someone walking upstairs, someone drawing water from the well, he couldn't tell whether it was real or not.
After that, the house sat empty for over 20 years, until I moved in.
Old Lin said the well rope on that well had been replaced. The old rope from the day Zhang Hongnian threw himself in was hung on a nail on the wall by the well after being dragged out. It hung there for 3 years, then rotted through and snapped on its own. On the night it broke, everyone in the alley heard a sharp crack, very loud, like someone lashing a whip. Some said it was the rope snapping. Some said it wasn't.
When old Lin got to this part, the black cat in the courtyard happened to hop down from the well rim and slip soundlessly into the base of the wall. Old Lin stared at the well and said, if a body had really been in the well, how could they not have fished it out? Unless there's a door at the bottom of the well. The Mid-Autumn Festival in 2004, I remember it clearly, was September 28th. That night I sat alone in the courtyard, drank a little wine, and looked at the moon. The moon was fine, big and round, turning the blue stone slabs pale. The moonlight on the well curb was especially bright, as if someone had splashed water over it, all wet and glistening. A little past 11, I heard a sound from the well. It was the sound of drawing water. The rope turning on the windlass of creak, creak, 1 turn, 2 turns, then a dong, the bucket hit the water. Then the rope pulled tight, drawing up very slowly, water leaking from the rim of the bucket, splash, splash. I went completely stiff. The windlass by the well, I'd lived here over a month and never seen anyone use it. Old Lin said that well had been abandoned long ago, the rope rotted, the windlass rusted solid. I'd tried turning it once, it wouldn't budge. But that night, the sound from the well was clear as day, someone was drawing water. I stood up and walked over. When I got to the well, the sound stopped. I leaned over the curb and looked down. The well was deep, no bottom in sight, only moonlight shimmering on the water. The surface was moving, ripples spreading outward in rings from the center, as if someone had just tossed in a stone. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I got up very early, walked into the courtyard, and froze. There was a ring of wet marks around the well curb, damp and slick, as if water had just been splashed there. The wet trail stretched out from the well, a string of footprints. Wet footprints, barefoot, not large, but not very clear either. The footprints led from the well to the foot of the stairs, and then, upstairs. There were footprints on the stairs too, step by step, going up. On the second floor, they circled around the hallway once, then vanished in front of a closed door, that door, the room that always had footsteps coming from it. I squatted there looking for a long time. The footprints weren't big. The toe prints were perfectly distinct, as if someone had just come out of the water and stepped onto the stones before drying off. The wet marks by the well dried quickly under the sun. But the footprints dried slowly, and after they dried, a faint white film was left on the bluestone, like salt stains. Later I measured it with a ruler. The footprints took 17 steps from the well to the foot of the stairs. My own stride, from the well to the stairs, was 11 steps. Those extra 6 steps, they were walked for me to see. I stood in front of the door, looked at it for a long time, and didn't dare push it open. At noon, old Lin came over to bring jasmine tea. When he saw the wet marks by the well, his face changed. He squatted down, dipped a finger in the water, sniffed it, then stood up and walked 2 circles around the well.
He said, "What was coming has come."
I asked him what was going on. Old Lin was silent for a long while before he said, "This well was filled in once. In 1958, during the Great Steel Smelting Campaign, the neighborhood ordered all wells filled. Every household's well had to be filled. Halfway through the filling, the men digging found a section of iron chain in the cracks between the bricks of the well wall. The chain was as thick as a child's arm, so rusted you couldn't tell what color it once was. One end was embedded in the brickwork, and the other end hung down, reaching into the darkness at the bottom of the well.
Someone tried to pull it. It wouldn't move. The chain stretched taut and straight, as if something was tied to the other end, something heavy. The men got scared, saying this well couldn't be filled, that filling it would bring disaster. So they dug out the dirt they'd already poured in, left the chain in the well, and the well was spared. Old Lin said, "That section of chain, I saw it with my own eyes. What it was tied to is down there, at the bottom of the well. The well is its door."
What Old Lin talked about most was Zhenhai Tower. Zhenhai Tower sits on top of Ping Mountain, and old folks in Fuzhou all know it. It was built in the 4th year of the Hanggu reign of the Ming dynasty. That is, 1371, when Wang Gong, Zhu Yuanzhang's son-in-law and commandant escort, was stationed in Fuzhou. The tower was 9 bays wide, with a double-eaved hip and gable roof, painted vermilion, and stood at the highest point of Fuzhou. According to the old saying, what Zhenhai Tower suppressed wasn't the sea. It was the Min River. The Min River is a dragon, comes down from the mountains in the west, swims all the way to Fuzhou, then rolls over before entering the sea. The tower was what held that dragon down. Old Lin's father was named Lin Afu. During the Republic of China era, he was the keeper of Zhenhai Tower. What did a keeper do? He handled opening and closing the tower, sweeping and cleaning, and taking care of the bell in the tower.
That bell was cast iron, taller than a man, hanging from a beam in the tower. Normally nobody struck it. But in August 1937, during the Battle of Shanghai, the bell rang on its own. Lin Afu later told Old Lin, that night, he was sleeping in the side room below the tower and was woken by the bell in the middle of the night. He threw on some clothes and went upstairs. The bell was ringing. The wooden mallet used to strike it hung on the wall, nobody had touched it. The bell rang 9 times, then stopped. Lin Afu stood under the bell, every hair on his body standing on end. He had kept the tower for 20 years, and this was the first time he'd heard it ring on its own. The next day, Japanese planes came to bomb Fuzhou. The bombs fell right around Nanmendu. Later, the bell rang on its own twice more, always 9 times. Every time it rang, something big happened in Fuzhou.
In 1970, Zhenhai Tower was demolished. They tore it down just like that. People from the Cultural Relics Department couldn't stop it. Lin Afu stood at the bottom of the tower, watching the workers set up the scaffolding, without making a sound. The day the demolition was finished, he went home, fell ill, and died the next year. Old Lin said that his father told him before he died, "The tower is gone, so the dragon is unbound. From now on, if Fuzhou gets floods, don't be surprised." During the days the tower was being torn down, Old Lin stood with his father at the bottom. He said that when the workers got to the ridge beam at the top of the tower, there was a dragon painted on it, its head facing south, right toward the Min River. The workers tried to saw the ridge beam apart. They got halfway through and broke 3 saw blades, and only cut it open after switching to a power saw. When the ridge beam hit the ground, everyone there heard a sound, a muffled sound. It didn't sound like wood hitting the dirt. It sounded more like something pushing up from under the earth. That night, Lin Afu went home, ran a fever all night, and talked deliriously. He kept repeating one line over and over. "The dragon is gone. The dragon is gone."
Old Lin said that his father had kept the tower for 20 years. He had seen the tower at its most glorious and at its most dilapidated. When the tower was gone, his father was like a man whose spine had been pulled out. In the spring of the next year, he was gone.
Later, Old Lin brought out his father's photo to show me. A yellowed black and white photo of Lin Afu standing at the gate of Zhenhai Tower, wearing a front-button Chinese jacket, a string of keys clutched in his hand. His back as straight as a board. Below the photo, written in fountain pen, was a line, The 25th year of the Republic, 1936, at Zhenhai Tower. That year he was just over 40. Old Lin said that when his father kept the tower, the wind at night around Zhenhai Tower was the strongest. The wind blew up from the mouth of the Min River, passed through the empty halls and moaned. His father said that on nights with strong wind, the tower would sigh on its own. The keeper never closed the door when he slept. He slept in the side room below, listening to the sounds from upstairs. He listened for 20 years.
In 1960, Fuzhou had a big flood. Water flooded into the alleys, over the courtyard floors, and up to the well curbs. Old Lin was 32 then. Standing in the water, he saw something strange. The river water was clearly receding, but the water in the well was bubbling up, gurgle, gurgle, as if something at the bottom of the well was pushing it out. The water spilled over the well curb, then seeped back down around the curb, ring after ring, like it was breathing. Old Lin said, that wasn't the river water flowing backward. It was something at the bottom of the well, using the water, trying to come out.
I asked Old Lin, what happened then? Did the water recede? Old Lin said, it receded. But the water in that well receded slower than the river water. Every other well in the alley ran dry except this one. It was still full.
In the city of Fuzhou there's an old saying, 3 hills, 2 pagodas, 1 river running through the city. The 3 hills are Yu Hill, Wu Hill, and Ping Hill. The 2 pagodas are the White Pagoda and the Black Pagoda. The White Pagoda stands on Yu Hill. It's called the Baoan Dingguang Duobao Pagoda, built by Wang Shunji, the king of Min, as a prayer for his parents in the late Tang dynasty. The Black Pagoda sits at the foot of Wu Hill, called the Chongmiao Baoxing Jianlao Pagoda, built by Wang Xinji's son Wang Yanqi in 941, nearly 30 years after the White Pagoda. The Black Pagoda is a stone tower, built layer by layer with black stones. There's a crack in the pagoda body, running straight down from top to bottom, like something had pried it open from inside. Old Lin said that the old-timers in Fuzhou all know, the dragon of the Min River has 2 horns nailed down in the city. 1 horn is the White Pagoda, 1 horn is the Black Pagoda. As long as the 2 pagodas don't fall, the dragon can't get out to sea. The White Pagoda has been burned down and rebuilt several times, but the Black Pagoda is a real stone tower. In the 1990s, the Black Pagoda was due for repairs and scaffolding went up. The workers ran into a strange thing. During the day, everything was fine, but at night, there was a sound from inside the pagoda, the sound of chiseling stone. Talk, talk, talk. It came from within the pagoda body, muffled, 1 strike after another, very regular, like someone was chiseling something in the pagoda's core. The workers thought it was rats, but the pagoda was built of stone, airtight. Rats couldn't get in. Then they thought it was the wind, but there was no wind that night. Later, people from the Cultural Relics Bureau came, listened specially at night, and they heard it too. Talk, talk, talk. It chiseled all night. The next day, the sound was gone.
The Cultural Relics Bureau people investigated for half a month and couldn't figure out anything. In the end, they wrote in the report, attributed to wind.
Later, I went to Wu Hill to see the Black Pagoda. It stands at the foot of Wu Hill, surrounded by houses. A 7-story stone pagoda, dark and heavy. The crack on its body runs from the 1st level all the way to the 7th, wide enough to fit a finger. The stone balustrade at the base was newly repaired, but the pagoda body itself was mottled, covered in marks gnawed out by centuries of wind and rain. I walked around the pagoda once, and when I got to the back, I heard a sound inside. Talk, 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 very faint, 1 strike after another, very regular. I pressed against the pagoda body and listened for a while. The sound seemed to come from within the stone. I looked up. The sky above the pagoda was very blue. No birds, no wind. Old Lin said, it's not the wind. It's the thing the pagoda is locking up, chiseling away every year. It's been chiseling for centuries. I asked Old Lin what's locked in the pagoda.
Old Lin asked me back, that house you live in, what's locked in the well, do you know? I couldn't answer.
Old Lin said, "The same kind of thing. This place, Fuzhou, has too many things pressed underneath. A building presses down one, the pagodas nail down two, and a well locks one more. The well you live in, what's locked there is the one at the very bottom, the one closest to people." After living in Fuzhou for a long time, I got to know Chen Shifu, the bicycle repairman at the alley entrance. Chen Shifu talked a lot and loved telling old stories. One day he brought up Mawei and said, "What Fuzhou people should never forget is that battle at the Ma River." He was talking about the Sino-French naval battle at the Ma River in 1884. That year, the French fleet sailed into the Min River estuary, intending to attack Fuzhou. The Qing government's Fujian fleet was anchored at Mawei. On August 23rd, the third day of the 7th lunar month, a little after 1 in the afternoon, the French fleet suddenly opened fire. The Fujian fleet was completely unprepared. In less than half an hour, 11 ships all sank, and more than 700 officers and men died. How many died? All recorded in the Zhaozhong Shrine, the Shrine of Loyal Martyrs. The Zhaozhong Shrine is in Mawei, built for that naval battle. Inside, spirit tablets are enshrined, densely covering several walls. Chen Shifu said his grandfather's elder brother died in that battle. When the ship sank, he was only 19, and his body was never found. Chen Shifu said that when he was a child, he followed his grandfather to the Zhaozhong Shrine. His grandfather knelt in front of the spirit tablets for the time it takes an incense stick to burn. When he stood up, his eyes were red. His grandfather said that on the day of the battle, the common people by the river all heard the cannon fire, booming from afternoon until dark. The next morning, the river was covered with broken wood, clothes, hats, and half of a ship's flag. The villagers rowed small boats to fish people out. Some of those pulled up were still breathing, some were not. The survivors said that when the French ships opened fire, the soldiers of the fleet didn't even have time to set up their cannons. That day was a Sunday, the fleet had a half-day off, and many soldiers had gone ashore. The men were on the shore, the ships in the river. They could only watch the ships sink, not even having time to fish anything out.
Chen Shifu finished, sighed, and said that battle La Fuzhou people remembered it for 100 years, and ached for 100 years.
I went back and asked Lao Lin. Lao Lin was silent for a long while, then said, "My third granduncle was at Mawei too. That year he was 19, serving in the fleet on a ship called the Zhenhai. The Zhenhai, the most heroic sinking in the Battle of the Ma River. The ship was hit by a torpedo. Its hull broke in two. Third granduncle went down with the ship and never came back up. The family went to Mawei to search. They searched for a month, only retrieved a set of clothes, and set up a spirit tablet for him at the Zhaozhong Shrine." Lao Lin said his father later went to the Zhaozhong Shrine several times, each time standing in front of third granduncle's spirit tablet for a long while. For those whose bodies were never found, the tablet only bore a surname and a place of origin. On third granduncle's tablet was written, "Lin Atu, from Minho." In those days, of the men who died in the river, 9 out of 10 were never recovered.
The day third granduncle's clothes were brought back, Lao Lin's grandmother held them and cried half the night, saying the clothes were clean, so why didn't the man come back? That blue cloth uniform was later kept locked in a camphor wood chest. Every year in the 6th lunar month, during the mildew drying season, it was taken out and aired once. Lao Lin saw it once as a child, washed to a faded white, the cuffs worn to fringes, worn down by third granduncle's years of leaning over the ship's rail on watch. Lao Lin said, "My father later told me that on the night my third granduncle died, the oil lamp at home went out and lit again by itself, out, then on, 3 times.
From then on, every year on the 3rd day of the 7th lunar month, Lao Lin's family burned spirit paper at the door, facing the direction of the Min River.
I asked Lao Lin, all these years, had he never dreamed of third granduncle?
Lao Lin said, "I dreamed of him once. In 1979, I was 51. I dreamed my third granduncle, wearing the fleet's blue cloth uniform, stood at the bow of a large ship. The ship was in fog. He shouted to me, "Still one short. Once they're all gathered, we can set sail."
I asked, "What's one short?"
Lao Lin said, "To this day I don't know. But that autumn, thick fog rose at the mouth of the Min River. A fisherman saw an old ship on the river, wooden-hulled, its smokestack trailing black smoke, moving through the fog, extremely slowly. The fishing boat tried to approach. As soon as the fog dispersed, the ship was gone."
Later, a fisherman pulled up a bronze plaque from the river, with 2 characters carved on it, Jinggu. The Jinggu was the flagship of the fleet back then, the first to sink in the battle. Lao Lin said, "That ship is still at the bottom of the river. It's been waiting for over 100 years, and its crew still isn't complete."
That bronze plaque was pulled up in the autumn of 2003. Some said it had fallen off another sunken ship. Others said it was just a piece of iron that fell off a fishing boat into the water. The Cultural Relics Department didn't file a case, and it was left at that. But Lao Lin said that on the night the plaque was brought up, the people living by the river in Mawei all heard the sound of a ship's whistle. Not the kind of whistle you hear now, but the old kind, long and muffled. Sounded 3 times, then was gone.
After Old Lin told me all this, my curiosity was piqued. On my next day off, I went to the city library.
The local gazetteer had quite a few entries on Zhenhai Tower. Built in the 4th year of Hanggu in the Ming Dynasty, destroyed by lightning fire during the Changhua era, rebuilt during the Jiajing era, destroyed again during the Xuanji era of the Qing, rebuilt during the Kangxi era. The tower was destroyed and rebuilt again and again. The last reconstruction was during the Daoguang era of the Qing. After the founding of the Republic, the tower gradually fell into ruin. In 1970, Zhenhai Tower was demolished. The timber and brick and stone were all moved away for other uses. That cast iron bell vanished without a trace. The entry on the Black Pagoda was even simpler. Chongmiao Baoxing Jianlao Pagoda, built in the 3rd year of Yonglong in the Min Kingdom of the 5 Dynasties period, stone construction, 7 stories, repaired by successive dynasties. During the Daoguang era of the Qing, cracks appeared in the pagoda body. During the Guangxu era, it was patched once. After that, nothing more was recorded.
In a pile of old newspapers, I turned up an April 1941 issue of the Southern Daily, one of the last issues printed before Fuzhou fell. There was a small item about the size of a cube of tofu, titled "A Merchant Goes Missing on Rongshu Lane." The gist was, a cloth merchant by the name of Zhang from this lane vanished the night before the Japanese entered the city. His family searched everywhere to no avail and suspected he had thrown himself into a well, or something of the sort. While I was making photocopies, the librarian auntie gave me a second look. She said that in recent years, someone else had also come to look at this newspaper, the same page. I asked who. She said an old man, dressed neatly and cleanly, spoke slowly, and asked about the same thing, whether that merchant from Rongshu Lane had ever been found. Holding the photocopy, I stood at the library entrance for a while. I could almost be certain that old man was Old Lin. But he had never once mentioned to me that he had also gone looking for this newspaper. I made a copy of the newspaper page and took it back to show Old Lin. Old Lin put on his reading glasses, looked at it for a long while, set it down, and said, "That's this Zhang Hongyan." He paused, then said, "Why are you digging into all this? Some things, once you know them, you can't put them down."
I said, "I just want to understand what exactly is going on with this house."
Old Lin said, "You won't understand it. My father kept watch over the tower for 20 years. I've kept watch over the well for 50, I still don't understand. You're a lodger, you've been here a year, and you want to understand in a year?" He had me there. That night, when I went back, I passed through the courtyard and took a look at the well. The moss on the well rim was so green it was nearly black. It suddenly occurred to me, I'd lived here for almost half a year now, and I'd never once seen this well run dry. Even in that autumn of severe drought, the well water was still full, so full it was nearly spilling over. Old Lin had said, the well is its door. Whatever is behind that door, its water was full. In November 2004, I got to know a taxi driver, surnamed Yu, who drove the night shift. Everybody called him Old Yu. That night I was coming back from overtime at work and hailed a cab at Zhenhai Bridge. Old Yu's car was parked there. I got in, and he chatted with me a bit. When he heard I'd just come to Fuzhou, he said, "You live on Rongshu Lane?" I said yes. He gave me a look and said, "That house, you're living in it?"
I said, living in it, why?
Old Yu didn't answer. After a while, he said, "Let me tell you something. Don't be scared when you hear it."
He said that in the winter of 2002, also around this time of year, he picked up a passenger on the night shift. At Zhenhai Bridge, almost midnight, an old man wearing a long gown, a grey cloth long gown. Nobody wears long gowns these days. The old man said, "Pingshan." Old Yu drove him there. When they reached the foot of Pingshan, Old Yu turned around, the back seat was empty. The man was gone. On the seat lay a stack of paper money, yellow ritual paper, pressed flat and neat.
Old Yu said his sweat came down immediately. He'd been driving a taxi for over a decade, and this was the first time something like this had happened to him. He threw the paper money away, went home, and burned 3 sticks of incense. Old Yu said he'd been driving a taxi for 16 years, night shift for 11. Every nook and cranny of Fuzhou, he'd been there. He said he wasn't afraid of the dark, wasn't afraid of remote places, he was afraid of the things you couldn't explain or understand. That night he went home, parked the car downstairs, and sat in it for half an hour before he dared go upstairs. His wife asked him what was wrong. He didn't dare tell her, just said he was tired. He said that during that period, he knocked off early. Past 11:30, he wouldn't run the Zhenhai Bridge route anymore.
A month or so later, another night shift, again at Zhenhai Bridge, again almost midnight. He picked up that old man again. Still the grey cloth long gown, still alone. This time the old man said, "Mawei." Old Yu's hair stood on end, but his legs wouldn't obey him. He drove there anyway. When they reached the riverbank at Mawei, Old Yu said, "We're here." He turned his head to look. The back seat was empty again. On the seat, another stack of yellow ritual paper money.
Old Yu said to me, "Tell me, in this day and age, who still wears a long gown?" I didn't say anything. Old Yu went on, "Later I burned the paper money. While burning it, I muttered, I said, 'Old man, wherever you need to go, you tell me, and I'll take you during the daytime.' After I said it, even I got creeped out by my own words."
He asked me, "Tell me, what do you think that old man was?"
I thought of that newspaper in the library. I thought of Zhang Hongyan, the year he threw himself into the well. He was 47. He wore a long gown year-round. I didn't answer Old Yu. I was just thinking, Zhenhai Bridge, from Rongshu Lane, is less than a 10-minute walk.
The people of Fuzhou have been worshipping Lady Linshui for 1,000 years. Lady Linshui was named Chen Jinggu, a native of Shadu, Songshan, from the end of the Tang and the 5 Dynasties period. Legend says that when she was 24, Fuzhou was hit by a great drought. She cast off her pregnancy to pray for rain, offended the snake spirit, and was killed by it. After her death, she became a deity, in charge of women and children, and also of the souls in the water. Inside and outside the city of Fuzhou, Linshui palaces stood everywhere, and the one with the strongest incense was at Shadu. Old Lin took me to the Linshui palace at Shadu to burn incense once. He said, "You've lived here half a year. It's time to go pay respects and let the lady recognize you." I don't believe in such things, but I went along. Inside the Linshui palace stood a statue of Chen Jinggu, kind-eyed and gentle, holding a sword in her hand. Old Lin said, "That's the snake-slaying sword." I said, "What snake spirit could there possibly be in this world?" Old Lin said, "The Min people have revered snakes since ancient times. Fujian is a place with many mountains, many rivers, and many snakes. Our ancestors worshipped snakes as their ancestors for thousands of years. Snakes aren't demons. Snakes protect the house and they guard the gate." He went on, "Fujian's snake temples are too many to count. Northern Fujian has the Snake King Temple, southern Fujian worships the green bamboo snake, and the snake that Fuzhou people worship is the one in the water." He said, "Burying a snake under the courtyard of an old house is an old Fuzhou rule. Before building a house, you first bury a live snake in the ground. The snake guards the house, and only then is the house stable. If the snake is there, the household is safe. If the snake leaves, the house is empty." I asked him, "Then is the snake of this house still here?"
Old Lin didn't answer. After a long while he said, "It's here. It can't leave. A chain is holding it."
He paused, then said, "That length of iron chain in your house as well. It's not locking a dragon. It's locking a snake."
I asked, "How do you know?"
Old Lin said, "In 1958, when they filled the well, I saw that iron chain with my own eyes. The links of the chain aren't round. They're flat, just like the chains that lock the incense burners in temples. That's a chain made by human hands used to lock a snake. It doesn't lock a snake that swims in the water. It locks the one coiled under the earth. That snake guards not the house, but the door beneath the well." I drew a fortune lot at the Linshui palace. The lot text was the worst kind, a lower lot. The old man who interprets lots looked at it for a long time and said, "Well water doesn't offend river water, humans and ghosts go by different paths. The place you live in, the well water is too vigorous."
The old man interpreting the lot was around 70, wearing reading glasses. He turned the lot text over and over, reading it 3 times, before he spoke. He said, "This lot is rare. It wasn't asked for, it just crashed into you." He said, "In a household where the well water is too vigorous, the yang energy can't suppress it. Live there long enough, and you won't be able to tell the person apart from the well."
I asked, "What happens if the well water is too vigorous?" The old man said, "Well water is vigorous because there's living water underneath. Wherever living water connects, it connects to other things."
Old Lin heard this standing beside me and said nothing. On the way back, he suddenly said, "The 7th of next month is the winter solstice. The winter solstice night is long. Don't stand too long in the courtyard at night."
I asked why.
Old Lin said, "When the well water is full, it's it looking out at the world. You stand by the well, it sees you, and then it recognizes you."
I asked him, "What if it recognizes me?" Old Lin said, "If it recognizes you, then you're no longer a stranger. When a stranger comes in, it blocks them. When someone familiar comes in, it just watches. It watches, and then it takes you for one of its own."
In 1966, as the country prepared for war and famines, air raid shelters were being dug all over Fuzhou. Banyan Tree Lane was no exception. Old Lin was 38 that year, and he took part. He said the shelter started beneath the old banyan tree at the mouth of the lane and dug southward, until they reached underneath the courtyard of my family's house. That's when something went wrong.
At 3 meters deep, the pickaxe struck a brick wall. The wall wasn't new. The bricks were old, with white mold growing in the mortar joints. The militia company commander had the wall chiseled open. Behind it was a brick chamber, not large, about 2 meters square, with walls neatly built of gray brick and stone slabs laid on the floor. In the very center of the chamber sat a stone coffin. The coffin was carved from a single piece of stone, with no patterns on it. The lid was skewed open by a crack. The gap was black. Nothing could be seen inside. Old Lin said he still remembers that stone coffin to this day. There were no characters on it, no patterns. Only ring after ring of water stains, as if it had been dragged out of water and left to dry. The stone wasn't local either. The stone used in Fuzhou was mostly bluestone or granite, but that coffin was dark in color, glossy and slick, as if it had been soaked in water for years. The militia company commander shone a flashlight into the crack and looked for a long while without seeing anything. He said, "Close the lid." Several militiamen went up to push, it wouldn't budge. The lid seemed fused to the coffin body, motionless. 2 more joined them. 6 men pushed together, and it still wouldn't move. Old Lin said he was standing at the very front then, closest to the coffin. He said he saw, in the gap where the lid was skewed open, a corner of clothing. Blue cloth, folded neatly, as if someone lay sleeping inside, with the corner of a garment showing.
It was a naval uniform. Old Lin said he'd seen one before, in a photograph of his 3rd granduncle, who wore that kind of blue cloth uniform. The militia company commander saw it too. His face went white. He had people bring cement and seal the entire brick chamber shut. The shelter was rerouted to go around underneath the courtyard. That brick chamber was never mentioned again.
But everyone who had dug into that chamber ran into trouble afterward. Old Lin counted them off for me. That militia company commander was transferred to a forestry farm in northern Fujian the next year and never returned to Fuzhou. One militiaman fell ill in 1970, it was in his lungs, and wasted away over 3 years before he died. Another, surnamed Wu, was an excellent swimmer, a member of the Fuzhou city swimming team. In the summer of 1971, he drowned in the Min River. Old Lin said, Comrade Wu had swum across the Min River before. He knew the water's depths like the back of his hand. The year he died, the river hadn't risen, no wind was blowing. There weren't even waves.
After Comrade Wu died, his family went to the riverbank to burn funeral paper money. Halfway through, fog rose over the river, and from inside the fog someone shouted once. It sounded like Wu's voice, and yet it didn't. After his family returned home, they took down all his swimming team certificates and never hung them again. Old Lin said that after Comrade Wu's incident, the neighborhood poured concrete into that section of the shelter underneath the courtyard, saying it was to prevent a collapse. Old Lin was there the day they poured the concrete. He said the cement was about halfway done when a sound suddenly came from underground, a muffled thud, like someone knocking on a wall from inside. The workers stopped, listened for a moment, and the sound was gone. The foreman said it was an echo, and they kept pouring.
I asked Old Lin whether that stone coffin in the brick chamber was still there afterward.
Old Lin said, it's there. Sealed in cement, walled in with brick. After the shelter was abandoned, the entrance was bricked shut too. Nobody knows if it's still there or not.
He paused for a while, then said, Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I can hear a sound from underground. Muffled. Like someone tapping on a coffin lid with their finger. Once, then again, a few taps, then a pause. It's been tapping for 40 years now.
In December 2004, just a few days after the winter solstice, I decided to go check out Ping Mountain.
Back then, the Zhenhai Tower hadn't been rebuilt yet. The building was only restored in 2006. In 2004, the top of Ping Mountain was nothing but ruins. The old stone platform was still there, a few stone pillars leaning at odd angles, and waist-high weeds covering everything.
That night at 11, I biked to the foot of Ping Mountain, locked my bike under a tree, and started walking up alone. The mountain path was dark, no streetlights, so I used a flashlight. The mountain was so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat.
When I got to the midpoint of the mountain, I stopped to catch my breath. I looked back. Fuzhou's lights sprawled out below me, and the Antai River cut through the city like a black ribbon. I suddenly remembered what Old Lin had said. The Zhenhai Tower was there to suppress the dragon. The dragon came up from the Min River, and the tower sat on Ping Mountain, holding it down for 600 years. I thought, with the tower gone, the dragon's loose now. So what's holding it down these days?
The thought made the back of my neck go cold, so I hurried on up. When I reached the top, I stood on the stone platform. It was made of stone and very large, you could tell how big the original building must have been. I walked a full circle around the platform, and then I heard it, footsteps. Not mine. Another pair of footsteps, very light, very slow, circling around me. I stopped, and the footsteps stopped too. I walked forward, and the footsteps followed. I turned around and shone my flashlight. The platform was completely empty. Nothing there. The footsteps kept going. Around the platform, one lap, then another, moving extremely slowly, like someone making their rounds. I stood frozen, not daring to move. The footsteps circled me 3 times, and then stopped right behind me. There was the sound of breathing. Right at the back of my head, so close I could feel a faint chill of breath brushing against the back of my neck. But there was no one behind me. I don't know how I got down the mountain. I only remember that as I started running, someone behind me shouted something, in Fuzhou dialect, a very old voice, drawn out long, as if it were coming from very, very far away. I ran a good distance before I could make out what it was saying. The door is open. That night, I had a dream.
I dreamed of the mouth of the Min River. The fog was so thick you couldn't see the water. In the fog there was a ship, an old wooden-hulled warship, black smoke pouring from its smokestack. A man stood at the bow, wearing the blue cloth uniform of the naval forces, his cap pulled down low over his eyes. He slowly raised his head, and I saw his face. His eyes were black. No whites. Black as 2 wells.
He called out to me, "One more is missing." Then the ship moved, heading out toward the sea, slowly sailing away. The fog closed in, and I couldn't see anything anymore. When I woke up, it was already light. In the alley outside my window, someone was hawking fishball soup.
I lay in bed, soaked in sweat. I thought of old Lin's 3rd granduncle, of that phrase, "One more is missing." Of the old man in the long gown that old you had driven. He'd taken a cab twice, once to Ping Mountain, once to Mawei. Ping Mountain, that's the Zhenhai Tower. Mawei, that's the naval fleet.
They're all waiting. For what, I don't know. In the spring of 2005, I was transferred out of Fuzhou. Before I left, I went to say goodbye to old Lin. Old Lin was still sitting in the courtyard, still by that same pot of jasmine, only the flowers had already bloomed and faded, leaving nothing but leaves. He looked at me and said, "You're leaving. Good. Once you leave, don't come back."
I said, "I'll still come to see you."
Old Lin shook his head, "Don't come. This house, this well, you lived here for nearly a year, and the thing at the bottom of the well knows you now. If you come back, it just might call your name."
When he finished, old Lin reached into his clothes and pulled something out, handing it to me. It was a small cloth bundle. When I opened it, inside was a short piece of iron chain, rusty black with the break at the end looking new. Old Lin said, "The year they filled the well, I secretly snapped off a section and kept it for 46 years. You take it. From now on, if you hear a voice from the well calling your name, throw this into the water. It recognizes this thing and it won't call you anymore."
I took it. That piece of chain has stayed with me ever since. It's still with me now. I asked, "That door, where does it really lead?"
Old Lin didn't answer. He pointed at the well, "Listen." I walked over, leaned over the stone rim, and listened. There was no sound of water in the well. But a sound came up from very, very deep down, soft, steady, like many people walking together, footsteps on wooden planks, pat-tee-pat, or like oars cutting through water, one stroke after another. The sound never stopped, muffled, rising from the bottom of the well and reaching my ears. I lifted my head and looked at old Lin. He sat there, eyes closed, as if he had known all along it would be like this.
He said, "They walk every day. They've been walking for over 100 years. The door at the bottom of the well, the road beyond it leads to the river. The boats in the river are waiting for people. When all the people are gathered, the door opens. I asked, have the people gathered yet?
Old Lin didn't speak. He glanced at the well, then glanced at me. That one look made my skin crawl. I suddenly felt that the person he had been waiting for might be me. After that, he said nothing more. I stood there for a while, then left.
In 2006, the Zhenhai Tower was rebuilt, and I watched the consecration ceremony on television. The new tower was even more imposing than the old one. Vermilion columns, golden glazed tiles. But the things old Lin had told me about, none of them appeared on that broadcast.
In 2011, I returned to Fuzhou on business. After I finished my work, I went to Pingshan.
Inside the new Zhenhai Tower hung a bell. An old one, cast iron, said to have been dredged up from the Min River many years ago. No one knew where it had come from. When I was going up the stairs, the bell happened to ring.
I counted. 1, 2, 9.
9 rings. Old Lin had said that when the bell of Zhenhai Tower rang on its own, it was always 9 times.
I went downstairs and asked the attendant tending the tower how many times the bell usually rang. The attendant said, on the hour it rings 3 times, just 3, never any more. Those 9 rings just now, I was wondering about that myself, thought the bell might be broken.
The attendant also told me the bell had been pulled out of the Min River a few years earlier. The dredging crew was clearing silt when they felt a big lump of iron at the riverbed. They hauled it up and saw it was a bell, rusted beyond telling its age. People from the Cultural Relics Office came to look and said the inscriptions had worn away, so they couldn't tell which dynasty it was from, only that it was an old thing. So they sent it to the Zhenhai Tower.
I didn't dare tell the attendant that the bell old Lin's father had guarded for 20 years, the one that had vanished without a trace when the tower was demolished in 1970, had never been found.
I said nothing. I remembered 1937, remembered Lin Afu, remembered that night the bell rang 9 times, and the next day, Japanese planes came to bomb Fuzhou.
Old Lin passed away in the winter of 2010, at the age of 82. People in the lane said he went very peacefully, he simply slept away. Half of Rongshu Lane was demolished later. The old house was still there, fenced off with plans to repair it. The day the construction crew came to seal the well, I happened not to be in Fuzhou. I heard that when they were sealing the well mouth with cement, a worker looked inside, the well was dry, not a single drop of water. It had been dry for many years. The worker who sealed the well later told people that in 30 years of sealing wells, he had never seen anything like it. The bottom was dry and cracked, but the well walls were covered in beads of water, one after another, rolling down along the brick joints, like something had just been crying. Even he felt it was uncanny, and after that, he never took on a well sealing job again. But on the night the well was sealed, everyone in the whole lane heard it, the sound of water inside the well. The sound of drawing water. The rope turning the windlass, creak, creak. It went on the entire night. The next morning, people in the lane went to look. The well was still dry. The cement was sealed tight, not a single crack. I only lived in Fuzhou for that 1 year. Since then, I have never gone back. The story is finished. What do you think? If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. New urban legend every day.